National Nutrition Interviews, the natural health experts, up close and personal. Dr. Zoltan Rona is one of Canada's most well-known practitioners of complementary medicine. A graduate of McGill University Medical School with a degree in clinical nutrition, Dr. Rona is a past president of the Canadian Holistic Medical Association. You'll know him from his best-selling book, Vitamin D, The Sunshine Vitamin. His clinic is located in Toronto, where he has practiced for nearly 30 years. A TV guest and lecturer across North America, Dr. Rona is the formulator of Tristar Naturals clinical potency supplements and consults with the maker of Vital Greens and Nutriflex, Naka herbs. He's also a National Nutrition interview guest.
I'm Dr. Zoltan Rona, and I'm a medical doctor. I've been practicing alternative and complementary medicine for over 35 years. My parents were doctors. My mother was a doctor, my father was a doctor, my grandfather, my uncle, and actually my grandfather on my father's side was a doctor as well. So, you know, I naturally fell into it. You know, like when you come home and your parents are talking medicine, you get interested, you know? So basically that's where I got my interest in medicine to begin with. But then I realized that medicine was, you know, basically a drug racket and just a legitimized form of drug pushing, and wasn't interesting for me. So I got more interested in this natural field because you could do things, you know, you could actually help people get better by getting to the source of their problems and using natural things that don't kill them, you know. So that's how I got into it. But there was basically a strong family connection. Well, what I love most about my profession is the ability to help people without the use of drugs and helping them both prevent as well as treat diseases using natural remedies that get to the cause or the source of whatever the problems may be. Well, I believe that it's better to get to the source or the causes of various illnesses as opposed to just, you know, treating symptoms and drugging those symptoms. So I found that using natural remedies, diet changes, vitamins, minerals, and so on, to be very effective in getting to the root of chronic ailments, getting to the cause of the problems, as opposed to just, you know, using something to solve the problem very quickly with a drug and suppressing symptoms. I've learned a great deal in practicing over 36 years, but one of the most important things that I've learned is to listen to my patients, because they often will give me the answers as to how to help them the best. And I've also learned that people don't go by the book. And as a result of that, we have to treat people as individuals and find out what works for them as opposed to what works in a textbook. Those are the main things that I've learned over the years. I've learned a great deal from other doctors as well, so I make a point of attending a lot of conferences in the States and around the world. In fact, last year I was in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, and there was a fantastic conference over there, and I learned a great deal from some of the lecturers there. So I continue to do that. So that's basically what I've learned over the years. Well, there have been quite a few changes, but I think that the major change that I've seen is that there are far more studies done by universities and done by a lot of scientists and published in peer-reviewed medical journals on the use of natural therapies. For example, vitamin D is pretty hot these days, and there's been a lot of conferences, a lot of published studies on vitamin D, just for one. But there is a growing interest in the field, and as a result, a lot more research being done than ever before. I think the most dangerous drugs are what are called the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, the NSAIDs. A lot of people take them without thinking that it can cause gastrointestinal bleeding and can cause macular degeneration and can cause all kinds of gastrointestinal problems, leaky gut syndrome, etc., etc. So people take them and they get a quick fix, but unfortunately the long-term consequences of using those things For example, in the United States, there are 16,000 deaths every year as a result of NSAIDs. This is a caution. This is one of the most underrated dangerous drugs out there. Of course, there are other drugs like cortisone, like prednisone. I wrote a whole big article on alternatives to prednisone or steroids in one of the issues of Vitality last year. And that's another drug that causes such a myriad of side effects that including osteoporosis, psychotic behavior, obesity, diabetes, and you name it, just about. So that's another drug that's quite toxic. The other one is, believe it or not, acetaminophen, otherwise known as Tylenol. And the number one cause of liver transplants in North America these days is Tylenol overdose. So, that's another drug. We basically have people taking these like candies, unfortunately, and they end up with liver problems of all types. And unless they look into some kind of alternatives, or at least to protect themselves from damage by these drugs, that we're really creating more problems than we're solving. Well, I think the most important thing that you can do to change your health is to first get educated in the field of nutrition. Find out what is the right thing, what kind of diet is the right thing for you to be doing. The second thing would be to get into some form of exercise. Physical exercise is tremendously important. Most people just don't seem to make it a priority, and I think it should be a priority. And the third thing, in order for you to prevent a lot of illnesses, make sure you get adequate micronutrients. And the most important one would be vitamin D, as I've said often before, and also take a multiple vitamin and mineral supplement. So if you can do those three things, I think you go a long way towards changing your health for the better. Well, most of those additives, preservatives, pesticides, various other additives, stabilizers, etc. These are chemicals that are foreign to the body, and the body is not able to usually deal with them in an adequate way and eliminate them. So a lot of these chemicals, they get stored in our fat cells, and they basically clog up our detoxification process. And as a result of that, I think they become toxic. We become allergic more and more to these things, and the body just can't deal with it. The number one most common nutrient deficiency in Canada is vitamin D. If you did a blood test on anybody in the middle of winter who is not supplementing with vitamin D, you'll find that between 80 and 90% of those people are vitamin D deficient. It's virtually impossible to get toxic in vitamin D unless you take like 100,000 units for like months. I've been prescribing between 10 and 30,000 units for most adults, and I've not seen one case of toxicity, so it's very safe to be using vitamin D in high doses. It is not possible to get all the nutrients that you need from your food. And the reason for that is the way the food is processed, and the fact that if you actually analyze food, look for all the different nutrients that you need for your daily requirements, you'll find that most foods that are sold in supermarkets or elsewhere generally do not have all the nutrients that you need for your daily requirements. So you do need to supplement. These things are just generally not taught in medical schools, and most medical doctors have no training whatsoever in natural therapies, diets, or anything like that. So for the most part, if you're not up on something, you're usually down on it, and that's basically why doctors are just not interested. There is a huge bias against nutritional supplements in the media, and a lot of that is fueled by propaganda by various conventional medical sources, which would include what I like to call big pharma. They don't want the competition from the natural health products, and as a result, they're afraid that a lot of people are going to gravitate towards the natural remedies and leave them with less profits. So that is where the source of all the negative propaganda is coming from. It's coming mostly from the pharmaceutical industry and from conventional medical doctors who are basically trained by the pharmaceutical industry. Well, in the manufacturing here in Canada, anything that's basically manufactured in Canada has to go under rigorous scrutiny. They have to, all the companies that are manufacturing these products, they have to provide toxicological studies, and they have to provide data as to proving that whatever you put into a pill is what's on the label and vice versa. So in Canada, we see that most of the products that are being manufactured here are of the highest possible quality, free of any kind of toxins like mercury, for example, and are truly effective as claimed by various articles and by the manufacturer. Well, the industry standards in Canada are much stricter than what's in the US. In the US, companies are not forced to declare exactly what's in the pill on the label. So for example, if you go to the States and you buy a multiple vitamin and mineral, they usually will put on their proprietary blend, and they won't tell you what's in that proprietary blend because they feel that it's some sort of trade secret. You are not allowed to do that in Canada. In Canada, you have to specify exactly what's in the pill on the label. So for that reason, the manufacturing requirements in Canada are much stricter than in the States. Well, I think the biggest hindrance to people taking nutritional supplements is the fear that they are taking a drug. Just because it's in a pill, people have this notion in their mind that this is some sort of a drug, and as a result of that, they're afraid of taking it. And the second thing is most likely advice that they get from their medical doctors, which unfortunately is most of the time 25 years behind, out of date, telling them that they're taking too many things and that they shouldn't take these things because nobody needs them, and that you can get all of your nutrients from your diet. This is completely false, but people believe this. So unfortunately, that's what stops people from taking more supplements. Well, the most common reason why people need to use nutritional supplements is because they are making up for deficiencies in their diets. Most people are under a great deal of stress, and they're not sleeping enough, they're eating poorly, they have other stressful conditions which all deplete them of nutrients. So if you happen to be a smoker, if you happen to drink a lot of alcohol, if you take various drugs, you will become deficient as a result of all that, and that's why you need to make up for it with some nutritional supplements. Just about everyone should take at least a multiple vitamin and mineral supplement, and they should be supplementing with vitamin D. If you're an adult, you need between 5 and 10,000 international units of vitamin D a day. Most people who are under lots of stress need more B vitamins. They may need vitamin C. And then there are people that are, for example, elite athletes or people that have had surgery recently or who are on medications who might need more of certain nutrients like coenzyme Q10, vitamin E, trace minerals. In cases of men with enlarged prostates, they may need zinc supplements, or they may need saw palmetto and other different formulas. So I usually try to individualize nutrients that are needed for the individual person, depending on what their situation is. Well, Tristar is basically a company that was formulated by default because what I had asked Naka to do was to formulate one product for me, for my office, to sell in my office, and they started off by making omega-3 capsules and omega-3 liquid, and I was very happy with that, and the president of the company wanted me to put the same supplement into health food stores, so I said, why not? And it got into virtually all the health food stores and it started to sell very well, so he approached me with helping formulate a whole bunch of other products. Now we have like over 20 different nutritional supplements, from coenzyme Q10 to SERRAPEPTASE to CURCUMIN to multiple for men, multiple for women. And basically these supplements are all formulated according to my specifications. There's no gluten in there, there's no soy products, no corn, no yeast. They're basically free of any kind of synthetic ingredients. And I think they're the highest quality supplements on the market today. Well, what I like about working with Tristar is that whenever I have an idea for a nutritional supplement, I can basically sit down with the president of the company and tell him what I would like to see. For example, we've got a new one coming out called Longevity Supremacy, and this one basically is a formula which will help not only prevent but also reverse hardening of the arteries and help people live longer. So this formulation is coming out sometime in January of 2015, and I'm very excited about that. Well, by law we have to basically analyze each of the products that we put into a bottle. So we do toxicological studies and we do HPLC on them, which means that we analyze whatever's in the product and we do a biochemical analysis of it. So we are ensured that what we say is in the product is really there. Well, inflammation is at the root of just about every chronic condition. I don't care what it is, whether you have cancer, neurological diseases, arthritis, cardiovascular disease, cancer, Parkinson's, whatever it may be, the process that produces the symptoms is called inflammation. So if you can control or reduce the inflammatory response that people have to various toxic ingredients in foods, or in our air and water, and etc., you can really help control inflammation. If you could do that, you reduce the symptoms and you can reverse many of these chronic inflammatory diseases. Well, SERRAPEPTASE is an enzyme that's derived from the silkworm, and it has very potent proteolytic properties. In other words, it will help digest protein a lot better. It seems to also help digest a lot of the inflammatory proteins in the blood that lead to chronic pain and chronic swelling and so on. So I've used it a lot in pain conditions. I've used it for helping clear out some of the sludge from arteries, get rid of dead tissue and plaque from the coronary arteries. It's also very mucolytic. In other words, it breaks down mucus. So people with chronic sinusitis or bronchitis, it's really wonderful for clearing that up. So I've used it quite a lot in my practice. I've seen some amazing results in people. I had one gentleman, for example, who about 2 or 3 years ago started taking it for blockages in his carotid arteries, and we did Doppler ultrasound studies before, and he had like a 70% occlusion in his carotid arteries, and he started taking SERRAPEPTASE. Within 3 months, the occlusions were completely gone. So I know for a fact that when we do before and after studies on people with blockages in arteries, for example, it helps clear it up. So SERRAPEPTASE is one of my mainstays in helping people overcome chronic inflammation, chronic obstructions, things like tendinitis and bronchitis, sinusitis, and quite a few other conditions. Well, curcumin seems to modulate the inflammatory response better than virtually any other single natural health product besides vitamin D. I believe vitamin D is probably the most effective at modulating the immune response, but curcumin has been shown to help over 200 different conditions, including cancer and arthritis and dermatitis, and anything that's involved with the inflammatory process. Well, most people would be smart to use about 1,000 milligrams of curcumin every day, and it should be the turmeric-derived BCM95 version of curcumin. Tristar curcumin contains something called BCM95. BCM95 is the extract that comes from turmeric and has the highest absorption of any curcumin on the market. If you compare to the standard curcumins that are sold in health food stores, it's absorbed 7 times higher. The other issue is that there's a lot of curcumins that are sold that are basically derived from petroleum products. BCM95 or curcumin supremacy or NutriCure is derived directly from turmeric and not from any petroleum products. So that's the real reason why. And all the studies that were done that show that curcumin is beneficial for inflammation were done with natural turmeric-derived curcumin. All the curcumins on the market these days, they basically are derived from petroleum. And that's not what the studies were done on. They were done on turmeric-derived curcumin. There's a big difference. Now, I spoke to one company, I'm not going to mention it because I don't want to get them all upset with me. They said, oh, it's the same thing. And if you actually do studies, that's how they can get the percentage of curcumin up. So they say that this is, 1,000 milligrams or whatever it is, and it's a lot cheaper. But the trouble is that it's not what the studies were done with, and the absorption rate is not the same. And we don't know whether it's safe or effective either. So the only one we know that is safe and effective is the one derived directly from turmeric. Now, turmeric also has other compounds in there which are effective. So if you want to get a good anti-inflammatory response, you have to use turmeric-derived curcumin. And that extract is called BCM95. Well, because there were some idiotic people who were taking 600,000 units of vitamin D a day, and they were getting like really high elevations of calcium, and that's a danger of too much vitamin D. But how rare is that? I mean, most people are so deficient in it that even if they took 100,000 units for a whole year, nothing bad would happen to them, because basically, most people need a huge amount to deal with stress, inflammation, viruses, Ebola, what have you. And basically, you don't have to be worried about that. But when some people did develop vitamin D toxicity, the governments were in a panic, and so they decided that they would overcompensate. And what they ended up doing basically is prohibiting, vitamin D levels in bottles to, they limited it to 1,000 units per capsule, which I think is ridiculous. Because if you went to any other country in the world, the States, for example, you can get vitamin D 10,000 units per capsule, or 20,000, 25,000. So here in Canada, we've overcompensated for these rare individuals who got toxic using way too much. For example, in the 1930s or 1940s, they were using 600,000 units a day to treat acne. Well, of course it'll help with acne because, basically it will elevate that protein in your blood that kills off whatever the bugs are. But we don't have to go that high. To get a good result with vitamin D, we probably should be between 4,000 and 6,000 units a day, and that's perfectly safe. Well, vitamin D, one of the most interesting things about vitamin D is that the more you take of it, the more your body will manufacture a protein called cathelicidin. Now, cathelicidin is very interesting because it has natural antibiotic properties. It can help the body kill viruses, parasites, bacteria, and fungi. The higher that level of cathelicidin is, the more likely it is to do that. So that's why I'm telling people, take more vitamin D, and you really don't need that stupid flu shot, because the flu shot is loaded with mercury, formaldehyde, and all kinds of toxins. If I had a dime for every patient that told me that they got the flu or a cold or some kind of infection after they got the flu shot, I'd be a millionaire. Well, if you're an adult, you should be getting, according to the top researchers in the world, you should be getting between 4,000 and 6,000 international units of vitamin D every day. That's if you're a healthy person. If you have certain physical ailments, if you have an autoimmune disease, if you have cancer, if you have heart disease, if you have other chronic inflammatory conditions, you may need up to 50,000 international units a day. For example, if you're a diabetic, you're far better off taking 50,000 than you are taking 10,000, and the risk of toxicity is virtually zero. In Canada, just about every adult is deficient in vitamin D unless they take a supplement. We do not get vitamin D from October to May in this country. We can't get enough from our food. In order to get adequate amounts of vitamin D, we'd have to drink about 40 glasses of fortified vitamin D milk per day, and not too many people are going to do that. So I recommend between 4,000 and 6,000 for a healthy adult. For children, it's considerably less. I think probably for most kids over 12, I would say probably around 5,000. For kids below the age of 12, probably between 2,000 and 4,000. So it's individualized, but I think we're not getting enough vitamin D in our diets, and we're not getting enough vitamin D supplementation. And as a result of that, we get a lot of flus and colds, and we get a lot of other chronic ailments. So I think that the intake has to be much higher. According to many experts, the Vitamin D Council, Dr. Michael Hollick, Dr. David Heaney, and many other people, Dr. Reinhold Weiss at the University of Toronto, who's done a lot of research on this. He says that it's impossible to become toxic in vitamin D in Canada if you're taking 10,000 international units or less a day. So that's my recommendation. Emulsified vitamin D is basically a water-soluble form of a fat-soluble vitamin. there's a lot of people as they get older, they're not able to absorb vitamin D that comes basically through food, or they're not able to absorb a vitamin D supplement that is oil-based. As a result of that, their vitamin D blood levels do not go up high enough to produce a good anti-inflammatory response. So when you take an emulsified form, in just about everybody, it's virtually 100% absorbed. And so the absorption rate of an emulsified vitamin like vitamin D is tremendously higher. And that's proven by doing before and after blood tests. Probably the most common condition for which a prescription drug is given is for low thyroid. There are more people on Synthroid and Altroxin and L-thyroxine than any other single prescription in Canada. So it's very common. If you live by the sea, it's less common. If you live inland, like in Ontario, where we only have fresh water and no real source of iodine, it's very common. I can't give you any numbers, but I would say 8 out of 10 people coming to my office for some kind of chronic health condition are on some kind of thyroid prescription. Why did I formulate Tristar Thyroid Plus? Well, I found that a lot of people have chronic thyroid problems as a result of poor nutrition, and they are basically deficient in things like iodine and selenium, zinc, copper, and protein, especially the amino acid tyrosine from protein. So that's what's in the Thyroid Plus. A lot of people are low in thyroid because of these nutrient deficiencies, and as a result, they're on medication that they really don't need. So this is not everyone with a thyroid problem, but a large majority of them are deficient in various nutrients. I've done iodine blood testing, or not blood testing, but urine testing on many patients, and I find that more than half of the ones that I test are iodine deficient. So iodine is one of the most important things to help the thyroid make thyroid hormone, and same goes for selenium and zinc and copper and tyrosine. The reason why probiotics are now being recognized more and more is because of all the studies that are coming out, and primarily those studies are fueled by the drug companies, because the drug companies have now decided that they want to formulate and create their own probiotics. As a result of that, we're seeing a lot more positive stuff in the media about them. But you know, the health food industry has been recommending and has been selling probiotics for well over 50 years, and they've been largely ignored until the drug companies came around and decided to make their own. So that's why you're hearing a lot more about probiotics these days. Probiotics, well, there have been books written on probiotics. They are very important not only for prevention, but also for treatment of most immune system disorders. Just about any kind of digestive problem, anything running from irritable bowel syndrome to Crohn's disease, colitis, any kind of inflammatory condition can benefit from probiotics. It's been proven that if you basically take a probiotic after taking an antibiotic, that you can reverse a lot of the side effects of taking antibiotics and many other drugs. Unfortunately, we do not have enough probiotics in our digestive system. Our friendly bacteria is overwhelmed daily by things like fluoride, chloride, bromide, and many of the other additives that are found in foods and in our water supply. As a result of that, we become deficient in friendly bacteria, and that leads to a lot of chronic autoimmune disorders, as well as things like cancer, heart disease, liver problems, and you name it. So probiotics are absolutely essential. L-glutamine is the most important amino acid that helps repair the lining of the GI tract. Some of you may have heard of leaky gut syndrome. Well, in order to repair leaky gut syndrome, where there's some microscopic damage to the lining of the small intestine, you need L-glutamine, you need probiotics, you might need enzymes, and you certainly will need a different type of diet that avoids things that can damage the lining of the gut. So the probiotics and L-glutamine go hand in hand, along with the diet changes and along with vitamin D. All of those are very important to help heal the leaky gut. The raw ingredients for the omega-3 supplements are coming from Norway, and they're probably the highest quality omega-3 from fish oil that you can get. And the thing is that all of the mercury is removed from there, and it's very highly purified. We are getting great results in arthritis and many other inflammatory conditions with the omega-3s. Liquid formulas in general are good for certain classes of people who don't like to swallow capsules, feel that the capsules upset their digestive system to some degree. People who psychologically cannot swallow pills too well. I've seen some people, they can't swallow the tiniest little pill. I mean, they can eat a big steak, but they can't swallow a little pill. A lot of that is up in people's minds, but when you give them a liquid supplement, they seem to do a lot better with that. We also find that as people get older, it's harder and harder for their digestive systems to break down capsules. So for them, a liquid form is far easier to use. Oh my God, probably over 1,000 articles. I've written for, believe it or not, for Reader's Digest, Alive magazine, Vitality magazine, and now I'm writing an article for Vista magazine. So I've been everywhere. Well, I've written 12 books. The first book I wrote was called The Joy of Health, and then later on I added The Return to the Joy of Health, and I also edited the Encyclopedia of Natural Healing through Alive books, and since then I've written probably another 10 books. The book that I think has had the greatest impact has been the Encyclopedia of Natural Healing, because that has a huge number of topics. It was actually co-written by 60 different doctors, naturopaths, homeopaths, and herbalists. So I think that was the one that was the most popular. Well, I wrote that book at the request of my publisher. I didn't have much of an interest in vitamin D when I was writing the book, but when I was doing a lot of the research, I was amazed to see all of the things that it could do if you get the levels high enough in your bloodstream. And the other thing that got me interested was the fact that I could help so many people overcome chronic inflammatory conditions using high-dose vitamin D, which I couldn't do before. So I found that the more research I did on the subject, the more interested I became in the vitamin, and now I'm a real advocate or promoter of using vitamin D. Did you know that vitamin D, if it was adequate in your system, could help prevent or can help save the government $25 billion a year in healthcare expenses, because we'd be able to prevent all these inflammatory conditions, including cancer. We'd reduce the risk of cancer, particularly breast cancer and prostate cancer, tremendously by using that. So we would save the healthcare system over $25 billion a year. Spirituality is something that's a very private and individual thing. So wherever you gravitate towards in terms of spirituality is probably the right thing for you. Now, I personally got a great deal out of a book and actually the audio tapes of a book called Conversations with God, and I found that that was very enlightening for me, and I've recommended that to a lot of people. So that is my number one. If you wanted to get started in anything to do with spirituality that wasn't involved with some kind of religious ideology or a concrete church or anything that you have to put a lot of money into, I would get Conversations with God. It's a very good investment, and I think you'll enjoy hearing, especially the audio tapes are fantastic. Well, right now, my biggest hero these days is Dr. Gifford Jones. I'm sure you've heard of him. He's from Niagara Falls. He used to be a gynecologist. I used to refer patients to him over the years. And then when he retired, he got into things like vitamin C and L-lysine, and he's formulated a product that would help with prevention or reversal of heart disease. And he still goes around speaking everywhere. Everywhere I go, he seems to be there as a speaker. And he's a wonderful guy. He's 90 years old now, you know, and he's still very excited and very sharp, and he still writes articles. So he's an amazing guy. So he's one of my heroes. The other person that's one of my biggest heroes is Dr. Jonathan Wright from the United States. I try to follow him around I go to conferences in the States, the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, and he's often there giving lectures on testosterone and other bioidentical hormone replacement. He's the father of bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, and so I try to get as much information from him as I possibly can. I've read a lot of his books and stuff, so those are the two of my biggest heroes these days, and I try to follow them. Well, I'm here to present a seminar on natural ways of reversing inflammation and to control or prevent viral infections. A lot of people are very afraid these days of the coming plagues, as they say, things like Ebola and H1N1 and bird flu, etc., etc. I wrote an article recently which got published in Vitality magazine on the subject, but I find that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of people who are afraid that if they don't get their vaccines and that they don't take certain drugs, that they're going to be at risk for getting some of these infections. And I wanted to let people know that there are natural ways of preventing them. So that's what the topic of the seminar will be. Well, I think our seminar sponsor is Naka and Tristar. Those are basically the companies that are sponsoring me in giving this lecture. I'm looking forward to a big crowd at the seminar, and hopefully a lot of word of mouth that people should be able to do things on their own to prevent a lot of chronic illnesses, especially anything resulting from chronic inflammation and viral or other types of infections. Well, I'm very impressed with National Nutrition. First of all, the inventory that you have is amazing. But the other thing I'm very impressed with is the fact that you're doing a lot of educational work, and that you're doing these kind of seminars and interviews, which hopefully will help educate the public on how to take nutritional supplements, and also to help prevent a lot of chronic illnesses. So I'm very impressed with that. Well, I'm very impressed with National Nutrition, not only the facilities, but also the fact that National Nutrition is doing a lot of public education by providing the public with seminars and videos. And all of these things go a long way towards helping people prevent a lot of illness and treat things naturally without toxic medications. So I'm very impressed with National Nutrition. Well, I think the big thing is public education, and it's really nice to see a company that is very knowledgeable in how to use natural remedies, and providing this information to the general public, because they're not getting it from any kind of conventional medical sources, unfortunately. Well, first of all, I hope to live as long as Dr. Gifford Jones, and I'm going to apply many of the principles that I've learned from him as well as from other doctors. Yeah, I think I probably will be giving seminars. I'll probably be still writing. So you can play this over again in 30 years and you could see.